and I'm very honored to welcome you to this webinar, a demonstration what Itzel and Kathy will do in their course, Responding to Everyday Racism, which starts March 6th, and it will consist of 4 sessions. So there are some people here that are completely new to Advocacy Academy, so I want to give you an extra welcome. And I'd like to share, we are an online academy and we're aiming to contribute to creating a more peaceful world. And we do that by offering live courses and self-paced courses, sharing all about nonviolent communication and its applications in life. And we have an advocacy library with more than 1,200 resources, videos, audios, learning tips, articles, with more than 100 facilitators over the world. Itzel and Kathy are 2 of them, and I'm so excited to be here. I was the coordinator of their course 2 years ago, and in my personal quest to find ways to respond to racist comments, for example, this was for me an eye-opener, and that's why I'm so excited to be here sharing this experience with you in this webinar. I'd like to present Itzel and Kathy. Itzel got to know NVC about 15 years ago after a challenging breakup. She was a social justice public policy lawyer, and she quickly saw how powerful these skills could be for activists, allies, and others attempting to seek social change. Itzel teaches NVC to attorneys, policymakers, and allies all over the US. Her past and current clients include the California State Public Defender, the Alameda County District Attorney's Office, and the San Francisco Department of Public Health. Kathy has a PhD in education from Stanford University, and she is a certified trainer with the Center for Nonviolent Communication. She is passionate about teaching skills for communication across differences. Kathy has been practicing NVC as a partner and as a parent since 1995 and teaching it since 2006. Kathy has offered trainings at a variety of universities, including the University of California, the University of Colorado at Denver, and the University of Cincinnati. Itzel and Kathy have been teaching the course Responding to Everyday Racism since 2020, and they're currently working on a book to bring these skills to a wider audience. Itzel and Kathy, welcome. And before starting the demonstration, I would like to ask you 2 questions so people get you a little bit more. And my first question is, what has been for you your personal motivation to start this course, to offer it?
Yeah, well, I'm happy to go first and then turn it over to Kathy. Well, you know, I've always had the good fortune of doing activism work with really wonderful allies. I've always had allies. I've always believed in the importance of allies. And, you know, before I learned nonviolent communication, my approach was really a little bit more, I would say more confrontational, like really challenging people, and really kind of pushing back against things that I disagreed with. And, you know, a lot of the people who I worked alongside with were the same way, and we would really cheer each other on. And after I learned nonviolent communication, I thought these skills were so powerful and so beautiful. And then I started really hearing my friends talking about the conversations they were having as allies, and specifically within their own family systems. And so many of them were telling me these stories about how their families would say something over the holidays or something, and they would confront them, and then they would be told that they had ruined Thanksgiving. And I just started really seeing, wow, these skills of nonviolent communication, not only are they so persuasive and so powerful, but they're also, and persuasive in the sense that they really open people's hearts to each other and allow them to be touched by each other. Um, but they also allow for the maintaining of that contact, right? That loving relationship, even in these really difficult conversations. And so I was super excited to bring these skills to allies. And then when 2020 rolled around, of course, I started hearing even more people asking for these kinds of skills and tools. And I thought, okay, now is the time. Now is the time to really step into my role as teacher, which I had been teaching for some time, but not on this specific topic. Um, and and so that's what I did. I approached Kathy, a very respected teacher, and was really excited about her saying yes.
It's great to hear that story, Itzel. I think Sophie, for myself, as you said, I first learned nonviolent communication in 1995. When you can imagine, I was a very young adult, and I was interested then in the ways that nonviolent communication helps one-on-one communication, as you said, Sophie, as a partner, as a parent, with a coworker, and how those daily communications can go so much better, deeper, more fluidly, even when there's conflict. And I was also a social change activist and interested in our society's political life, and to the quest to put nonviolent communication, those kind of micro interactions, together with really longing for social change, is what draws me to this work, and what I feel so excited about this, what we're able to do in this course, to bring those two things together. So thanks for asking, Sophie.
Thank you. And I was also, it's my personal interest, like, is there somebody or in particular who has inspired you in creating the course that you will offer?
Hmm. Yeah, well, certainly Dr. Marshall Rosenberg, the founder of Nonviolent Communication, has been a huge inspiration for me. And then also, just recognizing the importance of allyship, just and social change, just freedom fighters throughout time. I'm particularly moved by activists like Bell Hooks, who really look at love as a force of resistance. And as a yoga teacher, that's one of my many hats I also wear, really inspired by the work of Gandhi, and his real uniting of speaking truth and doing it nonviolently. And it's my understanding that this idea of nonviolence, ahimsa, was one of the inspirations for Marshall naming nonviolent communication as such. So those are some of really big influences in my life and in this work. Yeah.
Yeah, and it sounds even kind of grandiose even to name this, but I want to name Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and the vision of nonviolence connected to social change, that it is possible to really, really want the world to be different, to be a healthier, more equitable, more just place, and never to demean or diminish or denigrate the humanity of people who differ with you. And that's kind of my guiding light, are those people, from the great and famous to like King, to my friend Kit Miller, who lives this on the streets in Rochester, sort of in a very daily way, that we can put together the longing for a better world while holding the humanity of other people at the same time, and really push for change in that way. So yeah, there's a lot of inspiration, sort of local and far.
And is there any NVC trainer who has been an inspiration for you to create this specific course?
Oh, to create the specific course. At the time that I was thinking about this course, for me, there was a gap. Actually, there was a gap, and I was really excited to step in. And actually, at the time, I was a pretty new NVC student and teacher, relatively new student and new teacher. Um, I, yeah, I felt like there was a gap, and I wanted someone to do it. And I'm sure there were people doing it. I wasn't aware of their work. So I was super excited to step in. And in terms of just really, NVC really is about staying open-hearted and staying in compassion. But the teacher who I felt really modeled that in a way that was just so real and so like on the ground, like in her daily life, was Kathy, which was why I went to her first. When I learned from Kathy, she was talking about parenting. She was talking, and you'd mentioned in my bio, I came to this for a romantic relationship, and I didn't have children at the time, but I heard her talking about it in parenting. I heard her talking about it, in her religious community, in her spiritual community. Like I heard her talking about it, like really like boots on the ground, as they say. And I loved the way I heard her speaking about it. So that's what I would say.
Thank you. I'll just jump in and mention our friend and colleague, Roxy Manning, who does very similar kind of work, and who folks at NVC Academy might recognize as well. And she's I would say a co-conspirator in doing this kind of work.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Sophie. Yeah.
Before we do the demonstration, can you share a little bit about these 4 sessions? Like, how is the course organized? How is the dynamics of the course?
Yeah, absolutely. So, as you mentioned, it's a 4-part series. And for folks who are familiar with nonviolent communication, they might be familiar with these ideas of empathy and self-empathy and self-expression. And we divide the sessions very much aligned with these ideas, but we really think of them as, and we focus on the areas of, in the first session, listening, the second session, speaking, the third session, really remaining mindful throughout the entire process. And then the fourth session is where we really put it all together. And I'll let Kathy talk a little bit more about what each session looks like.
Yeah, well, I'll underline that one of the things that I love about teaching with you, Itzel, is your depth in the mindfulness work. Itzel, as I think Sophie said, is a yoga teacher, and I think we're able to bring a depth of insight into the kind of mindfulness required to have the very difficult conversations that we're talking about. So this is what Marshall talked about as self-empathy, but it really goes so much beyond that. Is how does one stay grounded and whole and healthy and mindfully entering the conversations that we want to and that we think would be productive for pushing towards more connection and more change. One of the vehicles we use in the course all the time is that of role play, because kind of unlike this webinar, we really, really like to get our students to practice. And so much of the course is spent with supported practice, and we'll come around to the small groups and help you practice. But we just know that when we face these kind of situations that get difficult interpersonally, the words come out so much more easily if we've built some muscle memory by practicing. So that's another really key aspect of the course, is a lot of interactive practice with us, and then also in small groups. So I think that we actually want to jump right into that practice, Sophie, unless you had another question.
It's a good idea.
Okay, perfect. So we are gonna do a couple of role plays. This is our idea. We're going to do the first role play where we don't bring any nonviolent communication skills to bear. So for the people who log on in the middle of this role play, they're going to go, what the heck happened? I thought this was an NVC training, because we're not going to use any skills. And we're going to talk about that we haven't planned this, we haven't scripted it, except to know the very beginning of the role play. And that's that JJ, who's a character that Itzel is going to play. And for the purposes of this role play, it's important to understand that JJ is a white man. And the topic of affirmative action is going to come up we're going to say, hello, how are you? And you'll see affirmative action is going to come up. Beyond that, we don't have it planned, except that we disagree about the value of affirmative action. And so I know there's people here from around the world, and just to make the notion of affirmative action understandable if you're not in this context, and I'll put this in the chat as well. Affirmative action is it's broader than this, but in our context, it's college and university admissions policies that take into account the impacts of racism and actively seek qualified students from historically marginalized communities. And they can look beyond test scores or grades to do that. So that's kind of the topic of this role play. And as I say, it's going to come up, and then JJ and I are going to argue about it. Itzel, was there anything else I should say to help set the stage here about the role?
No, I think that's it. I think that's it. And I think that, I'll mention too, I'm going to wear this hat. When I'm wearing this hat, that's when I'm in my JJ role. So my costume change here. And also to say that one of the reasons we like doing these role plays without having any skills to bear is because we think that this will look and sound maybe familiar to some folks. So just listening with that ear, and we'll ask, if this sounds familiar at all. And so I'm really playing this, with my whole heart. Like, I'm not a caricature, but I really am just a human being who has a very different position on this issue than Kathy.
Thank you. And then I'll just add one other piece, which I just remembered to say is, the course is about how to respond to everyday racism. And so sadly, there's so many different kinds of comments that we could think about that we'd say, well, that was racist. And what's going to happen here is not overt race. JJ's not going to say something that is overtly racist. He's going to say something which I, in my character, interpret maybe as racist, which we thought is kind of the more common situation that we might face. And it might be a little bit of different set of strategies for someone who says something very blatantly racist, or who is overtly, racist and proud. So that's not the situation here. It's more subtle. And did you, Sophie and Martha, want to put us into spotlight so we're side by side? That helps us sort of see each other. There, now I can see you. Yeah. Great. All right, so we start the role play. Ready?
Sounds good.
And hey, JJ, yeah. Hi.
Hi, how are you doing, Kathy?
I'm good. Good to see you. How are you?
Yes, you too.
How are you doing?
Oh my goodness, I am so swamped helping my kid out. My youngest kid's going to college. I can't believe it. I'm going to be an empty nester soon, and I've just been doing applications with him all day, every day, it feels like.
Oh my gosh, he grew up so fast. I can't even believe it. College applications.
Yeah.
I actually, I've known it's college app, my kid's a little older, but I've been aware that it's college application season because it was striking me that this is the first college application season since the Supreme Court struck down affirmative action. So they won't be using affirmative action anymore.
I know, I'm so glad. His timing couldn't have been more perfect.
Wow. Did you say you're glad?
Yeah, oh my gosh, yeah, because at least now I know, like, he's got good grades, he's got good test scores. Like, at least I can feel like more confident that he's going to be going to where he needs to be going to.
Oh my gosh, JJ, wow, I'm pretty taken aback because I was really devastated when the Supreme Court struck down affirmative action. I think it was such an important policy. I'm pretty shocked.
But it just takes spots away from the kids who deserve to be there. I mean, it's terrible.
Do you understand what the purpose of affirmative action is and was?
I mean, yeah, but like, let's also talk about the purpose of college.
I'm not sure what you mean.
I mean, it's for people who like have this test scores, have the grades to go and excel.
And if affirmative action was for kids who had so many fewer advantages, who grew up in schools that had less resources and bigger class size, and kids who didn't have the same kind of chance, to have them finally get a chance once they get into college. That's what affirmative action was for.
Yeah, but it's a little bit patronizing to think that just because you don't have money or, are from a rougher life, you can't do great. They do great too.
Well, they do great, which is why it's really a good idea for colleges to say, hey, we found outstanding students who maybe don't have exactly the same test scores, but let's let them in. That was the whole point.
Yeah, I mean, they should go to a college where their test scores and grades are meet the standard. Yeah, but they shouldn't be taking spots away from kids with better grades and test scores.
All right. Well, I can see this is actually not going anywhere. Listen, I wish your kid the best of luck, and I hope that goes well. But
Thanks. Thank you.
let's drop this
Yeah.
and cut. So
Wow.
it's so
I'll stay in character for a little bit
do you
for the
want to
debrief.
do you want to be Itzel talking how it felt to be JJ there for a moment?
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just felt like, oh, this friendship is going to suffer out of after this conversation. It just felt very combative and I was like holding back, like not like trying to not like be very insulting and rude, but that's definitely the direction I felt like it was going to go.
Yeah. No, me too. I
Really
didn't want
feeling
to get,
not heard.
yeah, I know it's a role play and I know you're not JJ, but my heart's beating. um curious from the audience there. I guess show of hands, does this kind of dynamic feel familiar? You can raise your electronic hand or your real hand. Yeah, thank you. Anyone want to come off of mute and share just like feelings that are coming up for you? Or Deborah, is that a hand to speak? Oh, no, just you were raising your hand. Yeah, thank you. Anyone want to come off of mute and share thoughts or feelings about it, or put it in the chat?
Kathy,
And I,
Sophie was asking, what is exactly your role? Maybe it's important to clarify that.
Say the question again, Sophie.
What is your role, or what was your role?
Right. So in this round of this role play, we are just being friends who run into this kind of conversation and basically don't know what to do to make it go better. And in a moment, we're going to try the role play where I get to bring some NVC skills to see if it can go differently.
May I speak?
Please.
So I'm not sure. I'm not sure whether JJ should I'm not sure whether JJ is feeling patronized, as in her friend is assuming that her children are not actually qualified and have been let in because as Black children, they're not actually qualified, so we're going to let them in and give them a chance. And is her friend assuming that her children don't have the qualifications? And is she now having to deal with her friend's assumption that her children are less than? And are you, I don't know what your name is are
Right.
you having to face the understanding that you have, that you now think that you think your friend's children are not qualified?
Thank you. Thank you so much, Carolyn. Itzel, do you want to field that at all?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like a little complexity to the role play because I'm actually playing a white person with white children. So,
Okay. Okay.
yeah, so when I said that I thought she was being patronizing, I was talking about suggesting that students of color can't get into schools without affirmative action, but not including my own child in that. Yeah, just as part of the role play.
Okay, so
Little
I was looking at
complexity.
you and your face and your skin color.
Totally.
I know.
Yeah. So that is a complexity in the way we played it. But it is, Carolyn, I love the questions because it actually is so interesting in all the subtle and nuanced ways that race and stuff could be expressed, right? If it were reversed, then absolutely that would be a way to read it. Milan's got her hand up.
Hi. Yes. So when I was watching the role play, I think, well, I was frustrated. Obviously, I've had this conversation with people before. I think the thing that maybe people don't think about who are opposed to it is that these are not like people of color who aren't qualified and the standards are being lowered to allow them in. They meet all of the requirements and they are being discriminated against because of this one factor, either their gender or their race. And I think that that's the thing that I struggle with, is trying to help people understand and see that piece, that it wasn't fair before, and that's why that was put in place to allow people who are qualified, even if they are different, to be able to have equitable access to higher education.
Yeah, beautifully put. And I sadly feel like in the conversation, the way Kathy and I were having it, I don't think Kathy would have ever gotten the opportunity to get to that because we were so stuck. We were so stuck. And maybe this is a good transition point actually to the other role play where we still won't get to hear Kathy get to that because I'm going to be the speaker. And Kathy's going to practice kind of that listening piece. But if this were the course in course 2, then we would talk about how Kathy would then have the opportunity to express her own position on that. But absolutely, so frustrating, these conversations. And I see someone else in the chat said, I feel like I've been in this conversation as well. And I know I have been too. So yeah, thank you so much for raising that. It's so important. And hopefully we can have these conversations where those points can be made and heard by the other person.
Yeah, and someone else raised in the chat that we didn't name what color skin I'm playing, and I really appreciate your pointing that out. So again, Itzel is playing a guy named JJ who's got white skin, and I'm playing, and we didn't change my name, a white middle-aged woman who we're calling Kathy, who is white as well. So the two of us in this conversation are white, the way we're playing it. And so we'll do it again, and all we know again is the opening. The opening will be the same, but at some moment you'll hear me remember that I took an NBC class and that I have choices about how I respond. And you'll hear me like kind of make that choice out loud, that I'd like to really listen to JJ. And then beyond that line, we don't have any of it planned. I don't know what JJ is going to say, and I don't know what it's going to feel like to try to listen with some empathy, but that's going to be my stance. on the belief that people who are well heard have more capacity to listen better. And so that even though I'm not going to say my thing right now, that I would have a possibility of coming around. That's that of coming around and saying my opinion. That's the hope. So yeah, we're getting spotlighted again. Thank you. Hey,
All
JJ.
right, so I have my JJ hat
Yeah.
on. I'm JJ again. All right.
Thank you. Hey, JJ, what's up? Good to see you.
Oh my gosh. Oh, I could go on and on. I'm knee deep in college applications. My youngest is going away to college. I'm getting ready to help him with that and be an empty nester.
Oh my gosh, congratulations. That is
Thanks.
such a milestone. I hope it goes great. You know, I'm not knee deep in that because my kid's already gone to school, but I've been really conscious that this is the first year of college admission since the Supreme Court ruled out using affirmative action for college
Yeah.
admission. And yeah, so that's a big
Yeah.
change.
Yeah, I'm so glad that this is when he's doing it because that is a relief.
It, wow. I've been pretty upset and disappointed that affirmative action isn't going to be used anymore. So it sounds like we're thinking about it differently, but I'd love to hear more. It sounds like tell me more. You're relieved about it, affirmative action not being used anymore. Tell me more.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there are a bunch of kids, like at least two or maybe even three kids from the previous year who had like over 4.0, nearly perfect SAT scores, and they didn't even get into their top choices. It was just heartbreaking to see. Yeah, and it just really felt like they would have if affirmative action hadn't been in place and taken those spots away from them.
Uh-huh. So those were white young
Yeah,
people who had really good scores and really good grades, and they didn't get
yeah,
in. They
and they
applied,
didn't get in.
and that was
Yeah,
disappointing for you.
yeah,
Yeah.
and for them, I mean, ugh, they worked so hard. This is the thing. Like they spent their whole, educational careers just like working so hard, studying, doing all the things right. And then to get at the end of the line just to get turned down, it just didn't feel right.
Uh-huh. So your sense was that these young people were really deserving and they had worked hard and they should just get to go where they want to go. And
Yeah.
it sounds like you're thinking that affirmative action was the reason that they didn't get accepted.
Yeah. Yeah, you see, these kids getting into these schools, they don't have the grades, they don't have the test scores, and they're taking all these spots, and it's not right.
Hmm. So yeah, we are really thinking about this differently. So I need to take a breath on that one. But yeah, what I heard you saying is your sense is that what affirmative action did was to let people in who didn't have the grades or test scores, like kids who weren't as
Yeah.
able to be in college. That's your sense of
Yeah.
what affirmative action was. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And that it strikes you as it was unfair, and so it's a kind of relief that it's not in action anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, there's like they know like now like okay, if I do what I need to do, like study hard, do, do great on the tests, like I can succeed. Like that's the message they've been getting their whole lives. So, now it's true.
So yeah, so if I'm getting it right, your sense is that there's really an alignment now between the messages that kids are getting, that if they work hard and get good grades and good test scores, then they'll get into school, and that it'll be colorblind, and that makes it all just
Yeah.
much more fair.
Yes.
Is that you
Yes.
getting it?
That's exactly it. Yeah.
Yeah, well, thank you for sharing that. I am looking at it kind of remarkably differently, and I wonder if you'd be open to hearing how I'm thinking about it, kind of my analysis of what affirmative action does and means and stuff like that. Would you be open to that?
Yeah. Yeah, sure, of course.
Thanks. and cut. To get the rest of the role play, you need to sign up for the class. But JJ, you know, how did that tell us how that felt for you in that context?
Yeah, I mean, it didn't feel like anything. It felt like we were just having a conversation. It just felt very frictionless. Like we were just talking, you were listening. I didn't, of course I registered that you felt really differently. You said you felt differently, but I could really sense like you were open to listen, you know? And I didn't feel like I needed to convince you. I feel like in the argument, I felt like I needed to convince you. You needed to see, the error of your ways. But this was just like, no, you just wanted to know what was happening for me, and it made it really easy to just share that and I kind of dig in. I had to dig in. It took me a minute to kind of land on what was at the core of what felt really important to me.
The fairness thing or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, and I can't remember exactly how you put it. Oh, that it was in alignment, like with what these kids had been told. Like it just felt like a straight line, like from what they've been told all their lives to college. And that felt like, oh yeah, that's what I want. I want them to know.
Right.
It
really helped me to say a couple of times, well, I don't agree. I think I said it twice or maybe times. That helped me keep listening.
Yeah.
Well, should we open it up, Sophie? We're happy to hear more. I think responses to or questions about the role play itself, or more broadly about the course. Just any wide open Q&A. Is that what we should do now, Sophie?
Yeah, we have 7 more minutes, and I'd like to invite all people who have a question or doubt, please raise your electronic hand. It's in the bottom menu for people on the computer, and under the reactions button, there is your electronic hand. Maggie, please.
Yeah, that was extraordinarily difficult for me to listen to. I want to be really, and I think part of my discomfort was it felt to me like I can even feel it in my body right now. And both of them were uncomfortable to listen to, just to be clear. And I think the conflict itself, I feel so very strongly. And that's, so here's what I'm trying to voice. I think the second one was hard for me because, and I have trained at NVC, so you'd think I do this better, but actions in my body are doing what they're doing. And here's what they're doing. They're screaming, you're giving voice to racism. That's what's kind of screaming in my mind. And so I wish we would have kept going with the role play because I see what you were doing in the validation. I absolutely honor that. And I like how I was waiting for it. Like, when is she going to say her part? When is she going to say her part? And I'm just curious if that's one of the fallacies of what folks try to do. Because I think that I've been in the first conversation many times, and it ended probably how it ended between the two of you the majority of the time. So I'm open to a different path. But I'm just curious about like what I'm explaining about that discomfort when we feel so strongly, it feels values-based, to listen to somebody and even validate what they're saying, reflect back, I guess is a better way of what they're saying. I wonder, Kathy, if you felt very uncomfortable, even in the role play, or if that has been either of your experience in real life of being like, I'm putting a mirror to something that I so strongly disagree with. This is hard for me.
I get it. I'll speak to it first, since absolutely, it is hard for me. It's hard for me even now. And this is my dear beloved friend Itzel, who is an anti-racism activist. Like I know it's play, right? But it's hard. And there's another way in which it's easy, which is that the deeper value that I'm trying to come from is that this is a human being. In my spiritual tradition, a human being created in God's image, You know, if in a more secular note, I would say a human being whose humanity I am committed to seeing. And if I can kind of keep that in one hand, then I actually care about that a little tiny bit more than affirmative action. You know, or right up there with, if that makes sense. And I want to see where this human being is coming from. And I also think that if I listen well enough, I'll be able to convince JJ. So I keep that in my back pocket too. That it's strategic, you know? So I hope that answers. Itzel, do you want to pick that up too?
Yeah, no, I was thinking very similarly. I mean, it was, I mentioned at the beginning, like this was really about my friends who were telling me that they had ruined Thanksgiving and they were mourning the relationships that they lost. And I wasn't trying to get them to change their minds about, like about the positions they were holding. But I really believe that there were better ways to have these conversations that allowed us to maintain the relationship and allowed us to really be heard on our point, and then ultimately maybe even touch their hearts and minds in such a way that they really start looking at the world differently. Because I'm offering up, I mean, I love the line, that you offer, Kathy, like I'm really thinking about this differently. And it's like giving them an opportunity to like go, oh, I can think about this differently. I don't have to be the bad guy, the enemy. Like I can just think about this differently too. So that's the hope. Yeah. But it's not to say it's easy. I've had these conversations too, and there is the turmoil inside, like, oh my gosh. Whew, And so I appreciated Kathy taking pauses. Okay, I got to take a breath. Hang on, you know, and that's part of it.
Other questions,
Thanks.
comments? Yehudit.
Yeah, oh, oh, trying to keep my, okay, there I am. What came up for me, like what is that helps me is curiosity. It's like, here's this person who thinks really differently than me. And I'm curious as to how can this person think this way? It's not like I'm going to agree with them, but it's kind of like saying, yeah, this is another human being, apparently a acquaintance, a friend. What's going on there?
Totally. I totally echo that. Curiosity is a core kind of place to come from. Do we have time, Sophie, for another couple, or what should we do?
Yeah, let's go with Jeff and then Jeffrey, and then we will end.
Yeah, thank you for the space. I appreciate what you've offered. Grateful. I want to acknowledge that during both role plays, I had a sense of being torn, and I felt a little like I was slipping down, into some yucky feelings that are uncomfortable. And that would be okay. I'd be present for that. But I wanted to just echo a takeaway that I'm grabbing from this hour together. You said, what I heard was, I expressed that I didn't agree, and that helped me to listen more. I think Kathy, you said that or something like that, and that was really helpful to me because I have the impression that I can't express disagreement or else I'll shut someone else off, and shut down the conversation. So thank you if there's any more you want to say about that, I'd love to hear.
Yeah, I find, just to echo, I find it super helpful, and I try to do it in a pretty soft way, which is like, I think I'm thinking about this differently, and I really want to step into Yehudit's like curiosity. But absolutely help. If I say that I know I'm not like shining them on, and I want to be honest that I'm listening even though I disagree. So yeah, and I love that as a takeaway, Jeff. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
Hi. What I would offer, what struck me was how flat the energy was at the end of the first conversation. And I've been in conversations like that, not just about this topic, despite many years of background in NBC, where, okay, I don't want to, we'll avoid the overt conflict, but it's flat. There's feelings of disconnection, isolation, hopelessness at the end of that. We didn't get to the end of the second role play, but where it left off was there was energy there because there was some connection happening. There was exchange. There was the humanness. So that's what I would offer as my observation.
Yeah, I love that. I felt it. I'm guessing you did too, Kathy, but I really felt that. I felt like there was and even the fact that you were saying that Kathy was saying that she disagreed really invited me into feeling like, oh, we can have conversation here. We don't have to agree and we can still stay connected and we can still engage. So, yeah, kind of just to touch on what Jeff said before, that actually was really nice for me actually to know that we could disagree and we could still have a conversation. And I did feel a really good energy at the end. And I felt like channeling JJ, I felt really open to hearing Kathy's position, which I was not after the first role play. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Kathy and Itzel. I think you gave a really good demonstration of how the course is and it will be. And we are very grateful that you are willing to be with us here and also to all people assisting. So yeah, this is an open and a warm invitation to take part in this course in 2 weeks, March 6th. It's a series of 4 sessions at the same time we started today. And Marta will put the link of the landing page in the chat. There you can find all the information and how to sign up. Please, if you have any other question for us, NVC Academy, or for Itzel and Kathy, you can send us an email at the help desk. It's help@nvcacademy.com. And Itzel and Kathy, is there something else you want to share or comment before closing?
Just so grateful for everyone's presence here tonight and attention. I know that there are always dozens of things we could be doing on any given Zoom on any given night. And just so grateful that you're all here with us today. And thank you so much, Marta and Sophie as well for your support tonight.